You think you can just eat my corn and ignore me in front of the king? Answer me when I am talking to you.
In the ancient kingdom of Obinna, people feared two things more than hunger and war. The first was speaking against tradition. The second was disappointing King Adetokunbo. At 43 years old, King Adetokunbo had become one of the most respected rulers across neighboring kingdoms. He was calm in speech, wise in judgment, and feared by dishonest men. When problems entered Obinna, the king solved them. When traders argued, the king settled it. When neighboring villages fought, the king restored peace. But despite all his wisdom, one problem refused to leave him alone. The king was unmarried. Every royal council meeting eventually returned to the same exhausting discussion. "Your Majesty," Chief Olofin would say dramatically while adjusting his red cap, "a kingdom without a queen is like soup without salt." The old chiefs always nodded seriously whenever he said this, even though some of them had 3 wives who no longer greeted them. King Adetokunbo was tired. Every week, another wealthy family arrived with a daughter they described as humble, respectful, trained in royal culture. Yet somehow, every conversation sounded exactly the same. One woman spoke about imported perfumes for nearly an hour. Another praised her own beauty so passionately that even the palace guards became uncomfortable. One lady even brought a painted portrait of herself as a gift to the king. After she left, King Adetokunbo stared at the painting quietly before asking Captain Udemy, "Was she planning to marry me?"
Was she planning to marry me? Or herself? Even Captain Udemy nearly laughed. Pressure continued growing. Finally, the royal elders announced a grand bride selection ceremony. The news exploded across Obinna. Drummers practiced day and night. Market women fought over expensive fabrics. Young men suddenly began bathing twice daily because royal celebrations attracted visitors. And Mama Bisi, the kingdom's unofficial distributor of gossip, moved through the village like breaking news. "I heard one princess has skin smoother than boiled yam. I heard another can sing in 4 languages. I heard one family brought 20 cows just to impress the king." By the morning of the ceremony, the royal courtyard looked magnificent. Golden fabrics danced in the wind. Massive drums echoed through the palace. Beautiful noble women arrived smiling proudly beside their families. King Adetokunbo sat upon his carved throne looking calm on the outside, while internally preparing for exhaustion. Chief Olofin leaned toward him proudly. "Today your loneliness ends, Your Majesty." The king sighed quietly. Then it happened. A loud laugh interrupted the ceremony. Not polite laughter, not nervous laughter. The kind of laugh that sounded like somebody remembered something foolish during a funeral. The entire courtyard turned immediately. And there, standing boldly at the palace entrance, was a young woman arguing with a goat. She carried roasted corn under one arm while pointing angrily at the animal. "You are the reason your family has trust issues," she shouted. The goat stared back peacefully. The entire courtyard froze. The woman's wrapper was uneven. One sandal was missing completely. Leaves were trapped inside her messy curly hair, like nature itself had joined the conversation. Captain Udemy stepped forward immediately. "You cannot enter here,"
The woman looked around slowly. Ah, so this is where all the people with expensive problems gathered. Gasps spread across the courtyard. Mama Bisi nearly collapsed from happiness. Finally, something interesting. Chief Olofin looked personally offended by her existence. Who allowed this madness into the palace? The woman pointed calmly toward the sky. Technically, God. Even the drummers stopped playing. King Adetokunbo stared at her quietly. Unlike everyone else, he did not look angry. He looked curious.
Then suddenly, the strange woman noticed him too. For a moment, both simply stared at each other. Then she squinted suspiciously. "You look tired," she told the king. The courtyard froze again. Nobody spoke to the king that casually, ever. Captain Udeme looked ready to arrest the air itself. But the king simply asked, "What is your name?" The woman smiled proudly. Ebi, professional worker, occasional philosopher, enemy of unnecessary seriousness. A few villagers burst into laughter. Chief Olofin nearly fainted. "Remove her immediately." But before the guards could move, Ebi pointed toward one of the noble women. "That woman is pretending to be humble." The crowd gasped loudly. Lady Adania's face tightened instantly. Ebi continued eating roasted corn calmly. She insulted 3 servants this morning because her soup was cold. The courtyard became dangerously quiet. Unfortunately, it was true. One servant accidentally nodded before pretending to cough. King Adetokunbo leaned forward slightly. For the first time that morning, he looked interested. Ebiye wandered through the royal courtyard fearlessly. She stopped before another noblewoman. This one smiles like she wants to borrow money. Then another. This one definitely enjoys causing confusion and acting innocent afterward. The noblewomen looked horrified. Mama Bisi was enjoying herself so much she nearly forgot to breathe properly. Chief Olofin pointed angrily. "Your Majesty, this woman is unstable." Ebiye turned immediately. "Of course I'm unstable. Have you seen the price of food lately?" Even some palace guards struggled not to laugh. But King Adetokunbo remained focused on her. Not because she was foolish, because she was honest. Painfully honest. Unlike everybody else inside the palace, Ebiye spoke without performance, without strategy, without fear. And strangely, it impressed him. The ceremony continued, but the king stopped paying attention completely. Instead, his eyes kept following this strange young woman wandering around his palace, insulting decorations and questioning musicians. At one point, she approached the royal drummers. "You people have been playing the same song for 30 minutes. Are you fighting the drums personally?" The lead drummer looked emotionally wounded. Later that afternoon, palace cook Yasule found Ebiye inside the royal kitchen, eating meat directly from a cooking pot. "Who invited you here?" the cook shouted. Ebiye shrugged calmly. "Hunger invited me." Instead of removing her, Yasule sighed deeply and handed her extra food.
By sunset, one thing had become painfully obvious. The king no longer cared about the bride selection ceremony. He wanted to speak with Ebie again, and that terrified the royal council. Over the following days, the entire kingdom became restless. Rumors spread through Oduma faster than smoke. The king is spending time with the mad woman.
She insulted Chief Olofin and survived. She told Captain Udeme his beard looked emotionally confused. Mama Bisi repeated every rumor with the excitement of someone receiving free entertainment from the gods themselves. Meanwhile, King Adetokunbo found himself strangely peaceful around Ebie. She never bowed too much, never forced politeness, never treated him like a walking crown instead of a human being. One evening, beneath glowing lanterns inside the palace garden, the king finally asked her, "Why does everybody call you mad?" Ebie became unusually quiet. For the first time since arriving at the palace, her smile faded slightly. "Because people become uncomfortable," she said softly, "when someone says honest things out loud." The king listened carefully. Ebie looked toward the dark sky. "When I cried honestly, they called me dramatic. When I spoke honestly, they called me disrespectful. And when I stopped pretending completely, they called me mad." The king said nothing for a long moment, because suddenly he understood something painful. The kingdom had not rejected Ebie because she was foolish. They rejected her because she made people uncomfortable. And uncomfortable truth often sounds like madness to dishonest people. Days later, the royal council finally confronted the king directly. Chief Olofin was sweating aggressively. Before the meeting even began. "Your Majesty," he said nervously, "this woman is destroying royal dignity. She embarrasses important people. She speaks carelessly. She walks barefoot inside palace corridors. She insulted my walking stick yesterday." Ebie nodded proudly. It was standing arrogantly. Chief Olofin nearly collapsed. But King Adetokunbo remained calm. "For years," the king said quietly, "many polished people have entered this palace. Yet, honesty rarely entered with them." The council fell silent. Chief Olofin looked heartbroken. Outside the palace, the villagers continued mocking Ebie openly. Some laughed at her strange behavior. Others mocked her clothes. Children followed her around singing foolish songs. But slowly, people also began noticing something strange. Ebie was usually right. The people she warned others about often revealed ugly behavior later. The people she defended usually turned out innocent. And somehow, beneath all her chaos, she understood people better than most elders. One afternoon, a palace servant was falsely accused of stealing royal jewelry. The entire palace demanded punishment immediately. But Ebie stepped forward calmly. It wasn't her. The crowd laughed dismissively. Chief Olofin sighed loudly. "And how would you know?" Ebie pointed toward one nobleman standing quietly in the corner. "Because the real thief
keeps touching his left pocket every few seconds. The courtyard became silent.
Slowly, everyone turned. The nobleman panicked immediately. Inside his clothing, the missing jewelry was discovered. The palace exploded with shock. Even Captain Udeme looked frightened now. After that day, the kingdom slowly stopped laughing so loudly around Ibiye. Not because they fully understood her, but because they realized there was more happening beneath her strange behavior. Then finally, the day arrived. The day King Adetokunbo would officially announce his future queen. The royal courtyard filled once again with chiefs, noble families, villagers, musicians, and elegant women dressed in expensive fabrics. Everybody expected the king to make a proper decision. Chief Olofin looked hopeful again.
Mama Bisi looked dangerously excited. Ebiye stood near the back of the courtyard, eating roasted corn peacefully, clearly unaware of the emotional disaster approaching her life. Then King Adetokunbo rose from his throne. The entire kingdom became silent. For many years, the king began calmly. I believed wisdom wore expensive clothing. The crowd listened carefully. I believed dignity always looked polished, controlled, perfect. He paused. But the most honest person in this kingdom arrived barefoot, arguing with a goat. The crowd exploded with murmurs. Ebiye nearly swallowed corn incorrectly. The king stepped forward slowly. I have met educated people without kindness, wealthy people without peace, elegant people without honesty. His eyes settled on Ebiye. But this woman speaks truth even when truth embarrasses her. Complete silence filled the courtyard. Then the king smiled softly. And that, he said quietly, is rarer than beauty. Chief Olofin looked seconds away from leaving the physical world entirely. Then finally, before the entire kingdom, King Adetokunbo announced, I choose Ebiye as my queen. Gasps exploded everywhere. Some villagers looked horrified. Others looked confused. Mama Bisi screamed so loudly somebody almost poured water on her. Ebiye herself stood frozen. You people are serious? She asked nervously. The king laughed. A real laugh. Not royal politeness. Not controlled amusement. Joy. Months later, the kingdom of Oduma changed in ways nobody expected. Queen Ebiye remained chaotic. She still argued with animals, still embarrassed dishonest people publicly, still wandered barefoot sometimes, still entered the kitchen without permission. But she also transformed the palace. Servants were treated better. Corrupt officials feared her honesty. The palace became warmer, kinder, more human. And slowly, the kingdom learned something important. Not every strange person is foolish. Not every polished person is good. And sometimes, the people society laughs at are the ones brave enough to live honestly,
One evening, as sunset covered Oduma in golden light, King Adetokunbo stood beside Ebiye, overlooking the peaceful kingdom below. "You know," he said quietly, "the entire kingdom thought I had lost my mind." Ebiye smiled proudly. "Maybe you finally found it." The king laughed again, and below them, the kingdom of Oduma thrived beneath the rule of the king who fell in love with the woman everybody misunderstood.